been, and tribal voting has always been a factor in politics around the world. So America is not unique in the way that it votes. There are some similarities across the globe when it comes to voting. So those are my thoughts, Jermaine, and then I will share some of the thoughts in the chat later on as we come to a close. So is Trump really racist as in truly manifesting racism, or is he manifesting the tactics for his own advantage?
It could be both.
Mm-hmm.
It could be both. He could be really racist, but he could also be playing to his base and these people that are racist. I don't put anything past him. He knows that these are the people that like him. So yeah, he's going to throw that stuff out. It's like he has no core, like somebody typed up there, he's just for himself. It's not like he has any ideology or anything like that. So it could be both. I think that was a really good point, though.
Jen, let's throw in racism on a broader level, and Sherna and everybody. So back to the question of is he racist, and the questions posed by Dan, because Jen, we talked about, and earlier when we had the first session, we looked at Dr. Robin DiAngelo and her book, White Fragility. And in that book, she takes the position that every white person who benefits from privilege or from a racist system or from an established system that privileges them has to consider himself and herself as racist. And she goes on to say, if you are not disrupting that system, then you have to be seen as complicit with it. And if you are complicit with it, then you must be seen as racist. So Jen, focusing now on that, does that take us any further in the analysis beyond simply the question of one issue vote, or focusing on my issue, or not really agreeing with the racist part, but I have another agenda, or just being loyal to Trump despite the racism? Whatever the permutations of those excuses are, talk about the complicity aspect that allowed you in the first place to be able to overlook any kind of racism, as somebody says in the chat, descending a staircase and starting to marginalize Mexicans and demonizing Mexicans. What allows that person to ignore that and to be complicit with Trump and Trumpism? And are they racist on that theory?
I think that really we have to define what racism is, because otherwise it's too vague. I mean, does it involve, like, if you're just, let's say, not aware, does that make a person racist? Like, okay, here's an example. My mother, who was born in the 20s, my big brother's living with her right now, and she said something about Black people, like, oh, they're really smart. And my big brother said to her, that's racist. Don't you know that's racist? And she's like, what? The last thing she would think of herself was racist, but she is coming from the 20s. She's 100 now. And so she's coming from like a different generation and another level. And, I noticed with myself too, from the time I was little, how my thinking evolved. Like, my parents taught us, you don't be racist. You have to be nice to Black people because they were treated really badly. But they still were kind of like different. And then as I got older, I got in college, I got friends with Black people. We had conversations. I saw more, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, I'm not expressing myself very well, but I just think we have to decide, like, what is racist?
Yeah, and I understand your point, because you're right, it is a divide, because I'm quoting Dr. Robin DiAngelo, I'm quoting Oprah with her accomplice theory, and I am saying, by an extended argument, you are racist, not just because you are a good person or you're a kind person who doesn't see color or who does not really believe that bit. You are racist if you're complicit, you're racist if you do nothing about it and you benefit from it, etc. But you're right, there's a whole sector of the population that did not accept that analysis or is not aware of that analysis or hasn't gone on to do that kind of analysis for themselves. So I totally get your point. It's an open question as to whether you get an excuse, right? Because, you know, it's like the mother in the clip we just showed. You know, if you are voting for somebody who is about to implement, as part of his manifesto, a blanket Muslim ban. You do know that. You know, you do know if you are supporting somebody who is championing policies that you know will hurt a sector of the population. And you have to make a conscious decision, to me, to kind of not care, because you don't have to care. So it's a big analysis. I accept your view on that, Jen, that it's not open and shut, because there are just some people who did not see racism in that way. But Samuel, did you wanna say something from earlier?
You know me, I'm just a shy wallflower, Jermaine.
You're cured.
This is so wonderful, obviously, and I agree that an hour and a half is just not, it's just touching it, you know. To me, whether he is a racist in his beliefs is irrelevant. He's a racist in his actions. He's a homophobe in his actions. He's a misogynist in his actions. He's an anti-Semite and a white supremacist in his actions. He's an anti-Obamaist who is a megalomaniac with an inferiority complex, which is why he's dismantling everything, or trying to, that Obama did, because he's got to put up, you know, all of this stuff to try to overcompensate for the spiritual hole that is inside him, that people who seek money and absolute power do. And if he has his will, with all of this fomenting division, he would love to do nothing more than borrow a page from last century, utilize COVID and a civil war as his Reichstag fire, cancel all future elections, indefinitely suspend all human and civil rights, and seize absolute power like his idol Adolf did last century. And unfortunately, even the left wing won't see it. We have a bunch of people with their heads in the sand. Unfortunately, we human beings do not seem to learn from our own history. And this, you know, this creature, this fascist dictator, and I spell it D-I-C-K-T-A-T-E-R, I hope that's not offensive to anybody, but is a threat to the entire human race. We don't have another planet to go for. We don't, I mean, this is like time for a general strike. 6 feet apart, with masks, but millions of people out in the streets. Refuse fascism, people. You know, I mean, the discussion is wonderful, but our discussion is not going to get that into prison where he belongs. He and his family and every single one of those people who seem to forget what law is.
Yes, Sam, I see you have an automatic bleep on your side. Suzanne, did you want to say something? And Philip?
Sure. I just want to add something. That was great, Samuel. Thank you. I think that I like to stay away from the word racist. Is the person racist or not? I really have hung onto this thing. Is the person anti-racist or not? And to me, that is the key. If you're not actively doing something about it, then goodbye.
You're complicit. Thank you for that, Suzanne. And we talked about that because Angela Davis, as we've said before, is way famous for saying in this society, you can't just be non-racist. You have to be an anti-racist. In other words, it has to be on your chest for everybody to see. Philip, did you want to say something?
I think almost all of white America is racist. Without any question, it surrounds us. All we have to do is look at the inner city school systems and how they're the mismanagement that's involved. But what I did want to say was that I do see the 2016 election as very different from this election. This election race is really a prominent factor. I will congratulate the Republicans. I never saw anybody do a vilification campaign like they did on Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. They really vilified these two in a way that was hard to move past. And my last comment is, in 2016, I agree completely with Dan. Much of America is hurting beyond what any of us on the East Coast recognize for the lack of employment. I'm a Hoosier, and people in the Midwest have lost everything that they once had. And we certainly see it as reflected in the opioid crisis. I think it's all part of the same thing. They weren't thinking about race one bit. And I think the call to make America great again, boy, had the right ring